Okay, so it's showing not the full. We have to. If it's higher, if that helps or not. Wonder if we should set up over here. Yeah, we can see everyone if we come over here, but I'm wondering if I step back a little bit in the middle, it might be a better angle.
You do more than I do with this stuff. And you could take out a chair or two if you want.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Let's see.
On the chair, but that's based on.
Right,
Virtual.
that's right.
Left.
Yes, yes, we can
I
see
make
you.
fun of myself now.
Yeah,
Now, those are connected to the phone, so,
They're connected to your phone, yeah.
right, but is it, you have to press a button to,
No, so you can just
That's
double
what I
tap
do.
it and enter.
Yes.
hi.
And double.
I was able to connect to the public Wi-Fi. Is that okay? Or will it not sustain us very well?
Well, if you connect to the Wi-Fi, it's fine. It's fine for me, but
So I
I'm
make
not
fun of
sure if you
myself
wanna,
when I do
I
it, and my
understand.
hair's long, so people can't see, so people
Let me
walk by my
see.
house.
it's not strong enough.
You just don't want to
Okay.
talk to them. That's what
I
it is.
should do that, actually.
I mean, if you have a stronger one that we can connect to, it'll just be me. It won't be anyone else in the room. It'll just be
Right.
this computer.
Yeah, definitely I can do that then. Let me
Thank
see.
you.
You know, added on the contract, right? It's not on the contract.
Oh, it's not, how much more is it to add the Wi-Fi?
Just for one device on Wi-Fi, $300.
Oh, wow, okay.
Hardline costs you $100.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little pricey, but if
Yeah.
you got access to public there,
I think maybe we'll just stick with this. It seems to be doing fine.
okay, yeah, partially because they can be up to 10 people on Wi-Fi for $300, 3 megabytes per second.
Mm,
And it's about 25 megabytes per second for $100, but it's gonna be hardline.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but if not on the contract, let me check it out. If, maybe it's there and
It got to the point where
Here it is. Oh, they're muted on that side. Okay.
they made that decision without.
You need me to- Hey, how are you, Nate? Good. I'm trying to make sure I'm- No, you're good. I'm trying to see if I can hear. But I'm making an echo instead. You guys keep talking. Here, I think we're good on sound.
Still working on English.
I was going to ask the panelists, all of you have a microphone that has an on-off switch on it. If you look up there, you got to pull the on-off switch.
Testing 35.
Testing. Hello?
So if I could welcome you here this evening. My name is Judge David Connors. And we're having this, I think it's the first time we've done this, this Pathways to the Bench program here in Salt Lake City. And I want to give you just a minute of explanation of why we decided to do this at this particular time. I and several of these other judges in the room that I'm going to show you in a moment are members of the ABA Judicial Division's National Conference of State Trial Judges. And I happen to have the privilege this year of being the chair of that group. So where we were going to have our annual planning, which, as you might imagine, I chose that we would have it here in Salt Lake City. So we have with us, and they're not all here yet, some of them will be coming to our business meetings, they'll start tomorrow. But I'm asking please stand up. You always stand up over there. These are some judges who are the officers. Oh, hi, how are you? I didn't see you over there. Okay. Who are the officers and the directors, if you will, of the National Conference of State Trial.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And so I approached the testing for the Green Board of Utah Bar Association. I said, you know, we hold these Pathways to the Bench programs in cities all around the country through the American Bar Association. We do it every time we have an annual meeting or mid-year meeting. We have one of these programs at whatever the host city is that's having that. And so I thought, you know, how could we waste this opportunity? We happen to have here with us as one of the officers in our state trial judges group is Marcela Holland. Please stand up, Marcela. Marcela Holland from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm going to stop talking and hand the mic to you because she is the ABA Judicial Division's chair of the Standing Committee on Diversity in the Judiciary. And through her leadership, like I said, we have these programs throughout the country. So I'm just going to hand the microphone to her to just give you a very brief report, if you will, on why we do these things.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you to everyone for the warm welcome to Salt Lake City. I was here a few years ago with the National Association of Women Judges. We'll go women, yes. So it's good to be back. We have this Pathway to the Bench started, I don't know how many years ago, but the ABA Judicial Division, I think, was the first division to adopt a diversity plan and to start our diversity day. And we have a full day at both the mid-year and the annual meeting. The first part of the day, usually around midday, is a youth outreach program where we go to a high school or middle school, or we bring them to the hotel where we are. And so they can see judges from all parts of the country, from all different courts and all different backgrounds. They get to ask questions of us, but we usually have fun topics sometimes. The most favorite one of all of them is the alien from outer space, or the next, because they come and say, you've got 10 to the Bill of Rights. We don't like 10, you can only have 5. And so the students go through picking out what their most important 5 Bill of Rights are. And some of them are very interesting, and they have to justify those to us. So that's the homes. We're trying to also convince them they could be lawyers later on. So they hone their skills. The evening program, as Dave said, most of the time is a path to the bench where we have diverse judges. This last time I was excited because we had true diversity, because we had 5. We had not only a Native American justice, but we had a tribal court judge, LGBTQ judge, Judge Whitener out of, Chief Justice Whitener out of Washington State. And we had African-American judge, we had a Hispanic judge. So we had the broad spectrum, and they all had incredible stories of how they got to the bench. And we have partnered with the Young Lawyers Division because it's really the young lawyers and law students we want to reach. So we always had a moderator from the Young Lawyers Division. They do an excellent job because we tell them, you know what burning questions you have of judges. So you work up the script, you do it, and it's been successful. This year, we're gonna change a little bit because there's a fantastic program of mentoring Black lawyers, or Black and Hispanic and other diverse lawyers in the state of Washington. It's a whole program. They pick only 12 a year. It's a 6-month program. It's pretty intense. I think there's some payment. So we're gonna highlight, showcase that as part of our Advancing Minority Lawyers Showcase. We're also gonna showcase the ABA's Men of Color Project, which is another mentoring. So we're reaching out always to young lawyers, but this particular year, we also, as we've done in the past, reach out to seasoned lawyers. And the whole goal is not just to impress upon lawyers and young people the importance of diversity and inclusion, the importance of being the judicial system and of having fair and impartial judges, but also for lawyers who've been practicing for 20 years. You talk to some of them, they never really understood before, and they don't always understand the path that it takes for some of us to get to where we are. So that's what we are. We invite you to join us. We are in Seattle in February, hopefully in person. But any of you, I'm sure a lot of you judges should be members of the APA Judicial Division. And so we invite you to join the State Trial Judges Conference and to join us in our diversity and inclusion efforts. Thanks, Dave.
I'll just say one more thing, just so you understand. We had over like 65 or 70 RSVPs, most of which are appearing virtually. That's why we have the camera attending virtually, I should say. So we have a large group, and we hope to be able to reach that group. And we hope as we go through this, if you have questions, those of you who are online, we'll be monitoring the chat function. So we can see your questions, those of you who are online. And of course, anyone here in the audience who has a question, please feel free to raise it. We have an extra microphone here, so if you do have questions at some point, let us know and we'll bring the microphone around to you. With that, I'm going to turn this over to J.C. Skinner. Anyone who's ever been involved in the judicial selection process in the state of Utah understands who J.C. Skinner is. There's been no one.
A little bit of paper.
Yeah. There's been no one who has contributed more to the process and the really good process that we have here in the state of Utah of reaching out and selecting good judges than Jason, who's a primary advisor to Governor Herbert, who himself appointed well over 100 judges. Now, you understand, we only have 75 district court judges in the state of Utah, and 5 Supreme Court justices and 7 Court of Appeals judges. So if you do the math, you can see he actually appointed several positions 2 or 3 times, because he was in his gubernatorial position for almost, what, 11 years? And I didn't count it. Yes, I haven't counted the juvenile court judges. How many? About 30 of those? I can't remember. At any rate, the point is, he's appointed an awful lot of the bench. And the voice behind the curtain there for much of that was J.C. Skinner. So, at any rate, J.C., let me turn it over to you then.
Well, thank you, Judge Connors. Clearly, I have some good PR work going on. Thank you. And I do have to say, Justice Pierce is here in the room today. Justice Pierce was also very much a part of that process, as was Ron Gordon, who is now at the state courts, and he may be joining us later today.
And is attending virtually.
Oh, wonderful. So fantastic process. First of all, thank you all for being here today. It's really fun to be able to do this particular panel, and I want to just briefly introduce our panelists. We have with us, and I'll just go down the table, we have with us Judge Chon from the 3rd District Court, Judge Christina Ortega from the 2nd District Court, I think our newest judge here on the panel for sure, Judge Gus Chin, who is Holiday Justice Court, and Judge Shauna Graves-Robertson, who is with the Salt Lake County Justice Courts. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you as they introduce their pathways to the bench rather than me reading you something about them. So as we get started, I think most of you are probably fairly familiar with Utah's judicial selection process, but I think it is an important foundation as we go into this. You know, every state has a little bit different process. In Utah, both the state court judges of every level and our justice court judges are appointed through a judicial nominating commission and then appointment process through an executive with confirmation. So we have a really unique system here, and that ours is intended and designed to be a merit-based system. It is not intended to be a politically based system. It is not intended to be a favor-based system. It is a merit-based judicial appointment system. But one of the most, I think, important parts of that system is that someone cannot be appointed if they're not in the pool. You can't be appointed if you're not in the room. So unlike the federal system, where people really are often reached out to and invited to be involved, here in the state, you have to put your name forward. You have to, as Governor Herbert would say, throw your name in the hat. And that is true for every level of state courts here. And that can be a daunting process, and that's why we are really excited to be able to do this, to help demystify that process just a little bit, and let folks ask their questions about what some of those challenges look like, what brought people to those points in their own career, and how they navigated that and what their experiences are like. We do welcome questions. I would ask that we hold most of those questions to the end, but if you do have a pressing question in the midst of something, I won't ignore you. But we will leave time for answers at the end. So I want to start out just by giving each of our panel members a little bit of time, but I just wanted to ask you, just if you could tell us a little bit about what your background was that brought you to the bench. And we'll start with you, Judge.
Oh, thank you. And let me apologize as I get started. I'm going to have to sneak out. I'm double booked and I have another meeting at 6 o'clock. And so I will be going to that meeting, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. Now, I know that Judge Marcela Holland and Judge Denise Langford Morris have already been introduced, but I would be remiss if I did not give a personal shout out to the two of them, and let me tell you why. Of course, these women are involved in the ABA and they are here with the ABA, and I get that, but these women do a whole lot of other things as well. And I know both of these women very well because they are both past chairs of the Judicial Council of the National Bar Association. And for purposes of this panel, it's very important that you know that the National Bar Association was founded in 1925. It is the oldest and largest bar association made up primarily of African-American judges, lawyers, law students, and professors. And so although these women work hard for the ABA, they have been working hard for the NBA for a number of years, and I want to thank them for being here and being present today.
She's a past chair too. She might not get to that in her past.
But with that said, how did I get to the bench? Well, I've been on the bench for 22 years, and of course, things have changed in that period of time. But I think that my path is extremely unique because, as was mentioned, I'm at Salt Lake County. And I got to Salt Lake County because I worked for the Legal Defender Association. And once you became seasoned at the Legal Defender Association, you were sent to outlying courts. And so my courts were Sandy and Salt Lake County. And in Salt Lake County Justice Court, there were 4 women. There's no other court that was like that in this state. And it was staffed by these 4 women. And I got to know these 4 women very well. They were extremely nurturing and caring. And when one of them decided that she was going to retire, they came to me and said, listen, you got a young family, this is a 8 to 5 job, and you may want to apply for this job. And I did, and I was the successful candidate, and I have been there ever since. And for those of you who know and understand what's happened in this valley, Salt Lake County, of course, had jurisdiction throughout the county. But as municipal courts have come online, such as Holiday and West Valley, all of the municipal courts began to eat some of the jurisdiction of the county. So the county began to shrink as municipal courts came online. And so as those judges retired, we did not bring other judges aboard. So I am now Salt Lake County's judge, but it has been a marvelous, marvelous number of years. Of course, I have served amazing Salt Lake County mayors, and Salt Lake County was always a plum place to work, and it has remained so.
Lovely, thank you. My background consists of a couple of years as a defense attorney, several years as a prosecutor. And for me, the path to the bench stemmed in part from early introduction during law school when I interned with a district judge, and subsequently when I graduated, I had the privilege of being a law clerk, bailiff, and law clerk to Judge Tyrone Medlin, who was then and still remains the only African-American state-appointed judge in the state of Utah. It was a privilege because he was my mentor and still remains to this day. We have maintained that friendship. And he was, for me, what you call the gentleman judge, patient, tolerant, kind, considerate, and observing and working behind the scenes and getting a sense of what was involved and realizing the high level of job satisfaction he enjoyed compared to the practice of law. I thought that someday I might desire to transition there. And so fortunately, I was able to transition and eventually ended up at the Holiday Justice Court, which I'm entering my 10th year this year. Thank you.
That degree you say compared to the practice of law.
I can qualify that later.
Ortega.
Hi, my name is Christina Ortega. I guess you can call me the newbie. I started March of this year, so I've been on the bench now for 7 months. I started during COVID, so it's been quite the experience for me. I am a first-generation American citizen. I was born in El Paso, Texas, but primarily grew up in Juarez. And then my mom's company moved to Utah. We followed the company here, and I learned English by watching shows like Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, and one of the shows that I watched that I think sparked the interest for me to look ahead and think maybe I could do that one day was Reading Rainbow. I watched Reading Rainbow, and there was a show about this girl whose older sister was an attorney, and they were highlighting a day in the life of an attorney, and we showed the courtroom and we showed the judge, and I was instantly captivated by just the command the judge had, not commanding power, but commanding respect in the administration of justice. And so that seed was planted when I was little, and it stayed with me until I went to Weber State. I went to Weber State for undergrad, where I majored in criminal justice. And it was there that I met someone who really saw through, I guess, my insecurity about me wanting to eventually become a judge. So I had the encouragement of many different people, and I went to the University of Utah Law School, and I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor before that, just that unattainable thing that I've always seen as far as being a judge in the future. I was at the Salt Lake County DA's office for 10 years, where primarily I did special victim cases. And then 10 years at the Davis County Attorney's Office, where I, for the entirety of that time, was a special victims prosecutor. And then I had the privilege to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office for 2.5 years, and that was where I think I got that push to really apply for district court, because primarily before I'd applied for juvenile court, because I worked in youth corrections when I was an undergrad and I really liked working with youth. But then the U.S. Attorney's Office was a very humbling experience for me, because I was a prosecutor, a state prosecutor for a substantial period of time, and thought, how is this going to be any different? And it was entirely different. And I think that's what really sparked for me, this is the time for me to apply. And I guess I just, when Governor Cox called me, because you get the call from the governor when you're selected. So the number came up from Fairview, and I only know one person who lives in Fairview. So I answered the call, and he said, you know, you're my first appointee. You're going to be my first judicial appointee. And so it was just the most amazing experience. Clearly, being the newbie, I'm still learning, but it's great to be on the bench with people who I know I can call friends and colleagues. So I'm still adjusting, but I'm still alive.
All right, if you can't hear me, let me know, but I'm in the middle of a 2-week jury trial, and I'm trying to keep the jurors safe, my staff safe, myself safe, you safe, so please bear with me while I speak through this mask. And I think it's permanently fused to my face now, because it's been on for 8 hours, so again, I'm sorry about that, but let me state the obvious. I'm the first Korean American judge in Utah, but let me again state the obvious, I'm Korean American. And there are only 2 professions that are appropriate according to my dad, a lawyer or a doctor. So I actually grew up mostly near Baltimore, Maryland. So I went to high school in Towson, Maryland at Lock Raven High School. And I came out to Utah to go to school, undergraduate, and then I was finishing my undergraduate degree. And my dad said, well, what are you going to do next? I said, well, I'm going to New York City and I'm going to be a starving artist writing in Greenwich Village. And he said, oh, no, you're not. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not? No, you need to find something else. So we had this battle and I said, okay, if I don't pass the LSAT, I'm not going to law school. Dang it. Got decent enough grades that I was accepted into BYU Law. And so with the scholarship. So, and University of Maryland, Baltimore County rejected me. So, or Baltimore City rejected me. So I was like, darn it, I'm not going back to Maryland. So I thought I'd stay here and became a lawyer. And I've done a lot of different things in my life. I worked as corporate counsel for a small company. I worked in a small law firm and we were like a general practice. So anything that came our way, we did. Divorces, property disputes. I trained mostly with a transactional lawyer. So I wrote a lot of financial contracts, which people think that's weird, but it's actually kind of interesting. So, and then I went to Cal State Novaco-McCullough to work in industrial loans and banking organizations, and I did that for a while. And then moved to the ombudsman, the Property Rights Ombudsman's Office of Utah, where you mediate and arbitrate disputes between private property owners and the government when it comes to condemnation and land use. So that's where I think it started me on the path of thinking, I'm a neutral, third-party neutral. I'm going to start thinking this way. And at some point I thought, what am I going to do with my life? And that's when that's when I applied to become a judge. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I got here.
So I think, excuse me, I think one of the important points, you can see that there are lots of different backgrounds that people have that have led them to state court Utah. We've got a lot of folks with criminal justice backgrounds and lots of trial court experience, corporate experience, lots of different things along those lines. I think an important thing for people to remember if you are thinking about applying for the bench is that there's no one specific background that will qualify you for the bench. There are things that can be helpful, right? I mean, and I think top of mind and top priority of that is doing really well at whatever you do. Working hard, right? Working hard, having a good reputation, treating people around you well. I mean, personifying, in your own career, what those qualities that we're going to want to see from someone on the bench. That was, I know, Governor Herbert's philosophy. I talked to our current governor and his team, and that it goes through, right? There's not one specific type of background that they're looking for. It really is people who excel at whatever it is that they're doing. So that's just, I think, something to keep in mind. Some of you have touched on this. I won't make you readdress it, but what made you decide that you wanted to be a judge? Was there a specific incident or reason, or why did you decide to apply when you decided to apply? I know some of you touched on this, but Judge Graves-Robertson, let's start with you, so I know you need to leave.
Well, I enjoyed appearing in court. I like the fact that the judge balances things out, that the judge takes the law and applies the law. I like the fact that the judge has a great deal of power over those that are in front of him or her. And what I thought was important was that you can touch someone's life, and even if you are delving out a harsh sentence, it can be a positive. And I thought that that was very important, particularly in the justice court. I call us the people's court because we see everybody. And I believe that one of the most heartfelt things that's happened to me in the last few years was that I pulled up into McDonald's one morning to get some coffee. And a young man said, "Oh, Judge Robertson, it is so good to see you." And I said, "Okay." He said, "You may not remember me." He said, "But I was in your court." And he said, "Between you and my mother, you are the reason that I took a different path than that path that I was on." And I thought, that's why we do what we do. We take that time to make sure that if it's at all possible, someone takes a different path. And I like that. I like that. And I am going to excuse myself.
I agree with what Judge Graves-Robertson has said, particularly in part because of the important role that the judge, by my observation, having explained how I got introduced to the judiciary. One observation I recall, a particular incident, as JC is asking. I recall an incident observing Judge Medley, a defendant he had sentenced had taken his life. The parents came into chambers, and I had the privilege of sitting in chambers with Judge Medley. And just the interaction between the parents and Judge Medley made me aware of the difference a judge can make in the life of not just the individual before him or her, but those around, family members, extended. Despite the sentence that Judge Medley imposed, that family thanked Judge Medley for how gracious and kind he was to their son, despite what happened as well. Having observed that over the years, the 2 years I was his law clerk bailiff and then his law clerk full-time, just seeing how interactive, how he helped attorneys correct errant thoughts and behavior, made me realize that that would be the next step beyond the practice of law, where I could possibly make an impact and hopefully influence someone for good. And so for me, that was a transitional phase, just seeing how he conducted himself. And that's why, as I said, to this day, he's still my mentor.
And I think Judge Graves-Robertson really hit it on the spot by calling it the People's Court. I mean, that's what fascinated me about just the entire process of being a judge, because you're a part of the People's Court. You aren't the court, you're a piece to the puzzle of being the People's Court. So I was watching a webinar last year during COVID, and it was kind of the same topic about adding more representation on the bench. And one of the individuals who spoke, I think, addressed something that I think solidified for me. This is exactly why the time is now for me to apply. They mentioned, what if you go to court and for me, I'm Mexican American. I show up, the bailiff is white, the judge is white, the prosecutor's white, the defense attorney's white, no one looks like you. So there's automatically at times you feel like, is the process really going to be fair for me? There's no one here who I can relate to who looks like me. And it was just this obvious aha moment for me where I thought, that's true. That's absolutely true. We need to be a reflection of our community. And I've always wanted to give back to my community. I mean, the community has given so much to me. So that's what sparked it for me. As I mentioned before, that Reading Rainbow episode, and then just that statement, that powerful statement that was made, it just stayed with me. And then being at the U.S. Attorney's Office, that really humbling experience that I had to start all over, it reinvigorated for me that I am a student. If I could be a professional student, I would be a professional student. Okay, so I thought I could be a professional student as a judge, because I think one thing that people just do not understand is, when I used to look at judges before, I thought they know everything, and that's not true. They don't know everything. They're human just like all of us, and they're learning as well. So I thought this is the perfect time. This is all of the stars are aligning here for me to be a reflection of my community, serve my community, and have this amazing job where I'm going to get to be a student. I will be a student for life. I will keep on learning, and I will go in with that attitude, knowing that I'm never going to know everything. And I think that served me well so far.
Don't be like me. I didn't really plan on becoming a judge. I mean, I always thought in the back of my head, well, I might be cool. And like Judge Ortega said, like kind of like the puzzle pieces fell into place. But when I applied initially, I started doing the application. And if you've read the application, it's very intrusive, and it is very, you have to be really introspective and think about these things, and not write an answer that you think will get you the job, but write an answer that's true to yourself and true to who you are. And so first thing is, I had Judge Stephen Roth, who's a Court of Appeals judge, and I say since 2012, every time he saw me, he would say, well, Sue, have you thought about applying for the bench? And I'd say, well, Judge Roth, they don't want a transactional lawyer on the bench. Have you seen who they've appointed? Because you really should think about it. And I always thought, he's never seen me in court. He's only seen me in all the activities I've participated in, all the committees I was on, my bar commission, as a member of the bar commission. And I just thought, well, he doesn't know anything. But he kept planting that seed every year until it was before 2012. So it was like 5 years before 2012. And then finally in 2012, I applied. And I also applied because one of the members of the minority bar contacted me and they said, Sue, we don't have any judges, we don't have anyone applying from our community. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, well, I decided not to apply. No, you have to apply. And I'm like, okay, I'll put myself back into it, got the application done, and applied, because my parents always raised us to give back to our community, and service is more important than being famous, or my wish being a writer, or maybe being in a rock band. I'd like that too, but none of those have happened, so it's never going to happen. But I felt like I couldn't let the community down, and that's why I applied. And so I thought that was important. But let me tell you, it's not easy. And I just want to say this because this is going to be something that JC's going to bring up. And I had great governor staff. I had Justice Pierce, I had JC Skinner, I had Ron Gordon. They were all being so supportive during my time. But I became the pawn in a power struggle between the governor and the Senate. And the Senate wanted to have some more control over who the governor picked. And it was an extremely difficult process. I mean, to this day, when I think about it, I get PTSD thinking about it because it's awful. But I thought, if you back down, someone else is going to say, well, look what they did to her. Look what they did to Sue Chon. I can't stand up then. I'm not going to put myself through that. And I thought, I have to stand up. I have to be counted. And then somebody in my family said, well, let them tell you to F off to your face and just take the vote. And so, I think Justice Pierce can tell you all the long conversations we had and the tears that I shed, because it was really difficult. So it may not be easy for all of you, But we have to stand up and we have to say that we need a place at the table too as well. And so it may not be easy, but, you know, and maybe you don't want to go through that process, but you can't give up just because other people are telling you, no, you're not entitled to be there.
During that, and actually, we are going to talk about that just a little bit. So for those of you who are familiar with the process, you know, as I mentioned, there is a nominating commission and then names go to the governor. And the first step, as Judge Chon mentioned, really is, and everyone mentioned, right, is putting your name out there. That can be a very difficult thing to do. It is a very public process. You know, depending on the type of practice you have, your clients may see that you're, you know, applying to do something else. You know, your colleagues are all watching this closely. They're asking about you about it constantly. As mentioned, it's an invasive process. People are looking at every aspect about your life. They're sending questionnaires to everyone who knows you and has practiced with you and asking what you're like to work with. It takes a tremendous amount of fortitude to put your name in there and be willing to go through that. And again, as I mentioned, with people walking that, I did want to throw out there though, the process is confidential up and until names go to the governor. So you should be aware that even if your name does not go to the governor, right, it would be kept confidential. The process does look the same. They will run background checks. They will run credit history checks. They will also send out questionnaires to the folks that you list in your application. So there is some chance that people will know that you're applying for that reason. But other than that, the nominating commission is instructed to keep those things confidential. And for the most part, I think that has really been the case. I've not seen any violations of that. Once names are sent to the governor, and for most, for justice courts, I think it's typically, depending on the jurisdiction, 3 to 5 names that go to the appointing authority. With the governor, for district and juvenile court judges, 7 for court of appeals. Okay, so 5 for juvenile court judges and district court judges, and then for the court of appeals and Supreme Court, 7 names go to the governor. It's an incredibly complicated and competitive process. And it can be tough, and I'm going to ask folks to talk about that, to be in those pools. But I tell folks, like, you will get better if you're going through this process once or twice. You may not get appointed the first time. It may be somewhat difficult. People will try to make it easier for you, but I think it helps just to know what you're expecting. Every stage of interviewing looks a little bit different and has a little bit of different kind of stress associated with it. And so just knowing what you're walking into, I think, right, for lawyers, we like to be prepared. Knowing what you're walking into helps you prepare better and be more comfortable. So Judge Shauna, you talked a little bit about your experience. Is there anything you wanted to add, and just what your experience was like and what maybe you wish you had known going in that you didn't? We can come back to it.
Well, you know, I don't know. I would never put anyone through the same process that I went through. It was really, really difficult. But you know, and I didn't know that the press would always be trying to contact us and ask questions. And I was just trying to keep a low profile because I felt like the less that was out there, I didn't want to say anything. But you know, I also didn't want to break down and cry and then say, oh, she's too emotional to be expelled. But, you know, when you're under those kinds of things, I think you just need to know that, that there are good people that have your back, and that sometimes it doesn't work out because of the legislators that might be in power, but that doesn't mean you're any less of a person, that you're all very important. But you can't let that stop you either. So make sure that you have good people on your application that are going to be your references, and make sure you have a strong support network, because there are people out there who, you know, love you, care for you, and want you to do well, and are willing to give you the big hugs that you need when you need them, or the high fives. I don't know what guys do, you know. I should know because I have 2 boys, but you know, whatever they do to each other to say, hey, you're okay, you need to have that in your life.
Yes. What did I learn from the process? I think Judge Chon hit on it earlier. You have to be yourself. You can be no one else. And I think the reason why you have no choice but to be yourself is that your reputation is everything in the legal community. We have a very small legal community here. And as JC was saying, when you apply, you're asked, what judges have you appeared before within the last 10 years? What opposing counsel have you had within the last 10 years? What attorneys have you worked with in the last 10 years? So it really is about your reputation and how you treat others within that legal community. And the other level to it is, I'm from 2nd District, so that's Davis County and Weber County and Morgan County. So when I applied, the people on the nominating commission, because it is a small legal community, clearly, these were people that were on the commission were defense attorneys that I had cases with, people who worked in my office, judges who I appeared before. So especially the defense attorneys that I had cases with and the people that I worked with, they knew me when I wasn't in interview mode. So you really have to balance out, like I have to be myself because they're gonna see right through me, like whoever that was not Cristina. We don't know who that was. Because people would say that and I said, no, I'm gonna be myself. I mean, these people have seen me at my highs and my lows. We've laughed together, we've joked together. You have to be yourself. Another thing that I got through the process is, it's true, you have to keep trying. I went in already knowing I'm not gonna get it the first time. I might not get it the second time. Might not get it the third time. I'm just gonna keep trying because that's what you do. I think not only because obviously, as JC was saying, I mean, there's a limited number of individuals that go up to the governor and it's a competitive process. So I know the first time when I applied for a juvenile court position, one of my really good friends got it. And so when I got the call from Ron Gordon telling me that Judge Robert Neal got the position, I said, that is a great choice. You guys said, that's awesome. So I think for me, it was I got lucky through the process. Everyone who I went up through past the commission to the governor, they were people that I had worked with, people who were opposing counsel. There were people who I knew, and that was because I was really involved in the legal community. I was involved in different types of groups, and I'm just a very social person by nature. So, I mean, for the most part, if there were 5 of us, maybe 3 or 4 of us would talk afterwards and say, is that not horrible? But we're okay. So we had each other to kind of go through the process with, but obviously you have your family, you have your friends, you have your colleagues who you can vent to. So I think that's what really helped me out, is having people who I absolutely admired and was rooting for myself, thinking, okay, if I don't get it, all these other people are awesome. So I can't sit here and be upset if I don't get picked this time, because these are really amazing people. So I think you just need to have that. I had one friend who applied first time, and this was somebody who I just thought, it's not going to get to this person. This person is just going to keep trying. And this person didn't get the first time and called me and said, I don't know if I can do this again. And I was actually very surprised by that, because it's a given. You're going to have to apply and apply. And the moment you put that into your mindset, and you're going to get better each time, and you're going to prove yourself to the committee and the commission each time and to the governor each time, I'm the person that's like, challenge accepted. Okay, you didn't pick me this time. I will just keep on trying, and I will prove myself to you and let you know why I belong on the bench. So I think a lot of it is, and that's just my personality as well, I always, worst case scenario, let's plan for the worst case scenario. That way, whatever comes out of it, you learn from the process as well. Each time I went through, I learned from little mistakes that I made, or, it's like the closing argument as well. When you're done and you leave, you think, I forgot to tell them A, B, C, or D, great. Then you write it down for the next time. I'm not going to forget that next time I talk to the commission or to the governor. So I think you just really have to just have that kind of thick skin, but just, it's all about being prepared and really knowing that if it doesn't happen, the first time, you just keep trying.
From the standpoint that I had applied many times, I went before 4 governors, so I went before many nominating commissions. It's a daunting task. That is absolutely correct. And you have to believe in yourself. And what was reassuring for me were those on the bench and colleagues who reassured me, you deserve to have been in that group of nominees going before the governor. Each had a different personality. It's very competitive. So you have to bear in mind the mere fact as if you're going to the awards and that you didn't get the top prize, doesn't discount the fact that you were a qualified candidate. However, while overall positive, there are certain subtle hints that I recall that were discouraging, but they did not discourage me from continuing to apply. Even at the nominating commission, I recall one question in particular in 4th District. Is there anything in your background that would be embarrassing to the government if you were selected? And that was the first time that came up. And obviously, that's something you need to think about. You have to do that self-exploration. Did I run a red light and get a ticket? All goes through your mind. Another instance, there was a judge on that commission, and it was here in the 3rd District. And just his interaction with me told me that he didn't care for me as a person. You'll always run into that kind of scenario from time to time, but you cannot let it dissuade you. And one incident that stands out more than anything, and I've shared this with a few people, is in my meeting with the governor. It was in the evening. I walked into his office. One of his senior executive members sat in the corner, typing on his computer, never got up, shook my hand, or acknowledged my mere presence. So I knew that hint was there. Your time is not now. But then I applied again. Eventually, I'm here at the Justice Court bench, and I'm thoroughly thrilled to be privileged to serve on the judiciary at this local level, because that encouragement over those years from my mentor and others is what helped me to achieve that goal. So for those of you who are seeking and who believe in yourself, don't give up. Persistence and perseverance will be able to help you realize that eventual goal.
I actually wrote it down here. It was discouraging, but it did not discourage me. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever heard. Thank you for sharing that. I just, if I want to just add a little personal commentary here, and I've shared this with these folks, you know, as a lawyer, I never anticipated the professional opportunity to get to interview people who are applying to be a judge. I did that for 9 years. I never expected to have the chance to do that. And I think it's important for folks to know, as has been mentioned, it is a highly competitive process. We have a fantastic bar here in the state, and people who apply and who make it through this process are truly exceptional. And I would have people call me after they were not appointed, people who had just shown themselves to be exceptional throughout the entire process. Quite upset and say, you know, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? And they, you know, were dedicated to doing it again, but wanted to know what they needed to do. And again, there are exceptions. There are people who needed to improve certain things, but almost without exception, I would say you didn't do anything wrong, right? It's just an incredible panel. And there's, you know, I can't tell you why someone was picked over you, but please keep trying. I mean, that's how you get there. And as Judge Ortega mentioned, you know, it really is remarkable to see. And I will say a telling sign for any governor interviewing people is to interview someone and have them come back for a next interview and to be exactly the same and to answer questions exactly the same and to show that they haven't given a whole lot of thought, right, to what they said before or to the questions. Those who come back and show that they have really been introspective and thought about, you know, I told you this last time, and after thinking through this, I thought further, and you know, this is what's come to mind. Or we've had folks who come in and just said, you know, I gave you this answer last time, and I just want to really expound on that. You know, we hear this all the time, but anything that you're doing, right, you should be demonstrating your capacity to be a judge, your capacity to be thoughtful, your capacity to really think through things, to self-correct, you know, whatever those things may be. That's what's on display throughout this entire process. And so rather than getting discouraged through that, really use it as an opportunity to be more introspective so that you can come back and be better prepared. Because regardless of when you are successful, it's going to be tough. And those are some of the other calls I've loved to get, where people have called and said, I had no idea, right? Even though I thought I knew I was in for, I had no idea. So that's my next question for you all, actually, is what has been either the most surprising or the toughest thing that you did not anticipate or something you wish you would have known that it was gonna be like before you got to the bench? And Judge Ortega, we start with you this time?
Yes, what surprised me the most, I think I hit upon this earlier, and it's something that when I have the opportunity to talk to law students, because I think I just look back when I graduated from law school, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go off being an attorney and I'm gonna know everything. And I told them, you will never know everything. Just accept it, embrace it. You will never know everything. And that is the beauty of law, right? Because the law is always changing and you have to maneuver and adjust with everything. So I think the most surprising thing to me was, and I think I touched upon this earlier, when I appeared before judges, they were these superhumans, right? Untouchable. I remember I appeared before Judge Shauna Graves-Robertson when I was a prosecutor at the DA's office. She was on the bench, and then one day I saw her walking, and she's a little short lady, and I was like, Judge? So you just can't place them. And so I think for me, the most surprising part, and I think the most comforting part for me, was really belonging to this new family. I'm part of a new family in Ogden. I am part of this building in Ogden where these judges who I didn't have the opportunity to appear before, but I heard amazing things about. I'll go talk to them and they'll say, I don't know the answer to that. And I expect them, like, you have to have the answer. I don't know the answer. Please give me the answer. So I think that's been the most surprising part, that it's just this new group of colleagues that I have that I get to bounce ideas off of. And that kind of segues back to what I was talking about earlier about this, I am a student. I'm going to continue to learn, and I'm going to continue to learn with these colleagues of mine, and we don't have all the answers. We meet every Friday. We call it a brown bag. We'll meet and we just talk about little things here and there. And I very quickly became the expert on jury trials. Who knew, after being on the bench for only 7 months? And I started in March, and there were jury trials here and there, and then we started having jury trials. And before the judge I took over, he had 2 back-to-back jury trials. And one of my colleagues said, don't worry, no one's jury trials are going. Your trials are not gonna go. Well, guess whose trials went? Both of mine went. And then the following month I did another trial. And at that point I became the resident expert on jury trials and doing jury trials virtual and doing virtual jury selection. So I think that was kind of completing the circle for me, as far as, wow, I am already contributing to my colleagues. When I felt like I was taking so much from them, I'm now giving back. So now I'm part of this family, of this group. So I think that was the most surprising part, just to know that, and Judge Connors knows, I'll call him sometimes and what's the answer? Like, I'm shooting off the test. And it's not a test, it's a process. And I think I need to deprogram myself from that. But it's because when I appeared before judges, I thought they have the answers, and they don't. I mean, you talk about that during the process as well, because you're asked a lot of questions. How do you come to a decision? What's going to happen? And you know what you're supposed to do, but once you're in it, I think at times you panic at times. So, these are lessons from the newbie judge that I'm giving to everybody as far as me going through the process. But that was the most surprising yet comforting part.
What's been the hardest thing that you didn't anticipate?
I think the hardest thing for me was I started during COVID. During COVID. I felt like that kid from Home Alone. There was nobody in the building. I came to work every day. I was petrified to go home and do court from home like everybody else was, because I thought, what if something happens and I can't finish a calendar? So it was fear. I had a lot of fear. That was the hard part. There was nobody in the building, even though I could reach any of the judges via cell phone, or it's just not the same having people in the building and running down the hall and saying, hey, this just happened. I think the other part that has been, I want to say it's the hardest part, but I think going back to surprising, I've been a criminal prosecutor my entire career. There's another part. I have a civil calendar. I do civil cases. So I knew nothing about civil cases. And, I promised the governor, I promised the staff, I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm going to learn this. And I am not going to let anybody down. So that has been the hardest part. you know, I started off the first week, I call it the Pollyanna week. I was just, this is so exciting. I'm gonna be that student. I'm gonna learn all these new things. And then by the second and third week, I thought, I need help. I don't understand this at all. But it's just that process that you go through and you just have to commit yourself to it. So for me, that was the hardest part, is just adjusting to new rules and a totally new bar, because, you know, as a prosecutor, there's certain attorneys you appear before, and defense attorneys, and in the civil arena, I was, a lot of different civil practitioners appeared before me. So it was just getting to see all that. So for me, it was just that part, is just jumping in and hitting that ground running with the civil stuff.
Justin, how about you?
Thank you. I guess the surprises were not really surprises, because I hinted at the level of job satisfaction compared to the practice of law. Having interacted closely with Judge Medley, I was able to observe firsthand how much he thoroughly enjoyed and engaged as a judge. The academic aspect, all that was involved, helping to write opinions, etc. But until I experienced myself that level of job satisfaction, where amidst the challenges and the opportunities, you find and you sense that reward that you can see from the decision-making process, engaging with individuals, facilitating the attorneys in their practice of law, their professionalism, encouraging the civility. There is a reward or self-gratification that is indescribable, because again, I think if we travel this life without making a difference, our travel is in vain. It's just self-serving. And in this area of public service, that for me was so satisfying and the greatest challenge, and I made a note of this, was the balance. Occasionally, it takes an emotional toll, and you have to step back and just find that balance, especially when you have an individual who's, even as a prosecutor or as a defense attorney, it's a different arena when you're on the bench and you're making a decision regarding liberty and also a penalty that could be rather detrimental. And then, but the difficulty is knowing that applying the law to the facts, you've got to be able to retire and then say, I did my best, and let things go as well. And that's the difficult part, sometimes letting go and say that person has to make that decision themselves. You cannot babysit or be the social worker at the time. And that is the challenge.
I would say I remember speaking to a dear friend who retired probably 10 years ago, who had been on the bench for quite some time. And I remember her telling me, she's like, after being gone for just a short period of time, she didn't realize how heavy things had been. And I think that's something important to recognize, that while being a judge is a fantastic opportunity to serve and to give back, it is not an easy job. And I will say, people who go through that application process, Pollyanna-ish, right? You're like, this is going to be easy. I know exactly what I'm totally prepared for this. It shouldn't be the worst job in the world, right? But just know you're dealing with difficult things. It is intended, right? That's why you're there, is to make those difficult decisions. And so I think it is tough for folks who walk in not really having given thought to the types of things that are going to fall into their decision.
Well, I was just gonna follow up with that, because I think what people don't realize is that, for the district court bench, we deal with some really, really hard issues, and they're not easy. We don't separate into family court and probate court and all that. We do it all. And so, we hear some difficult cases, and sometimes in a family law case, you hear terrible things that are going on with kids, and you want to make them safe, but there's no provision in the law that lets you give them to somebody else, because the parents just aren't that bad. It's just that you feel like they're not doing enough. Or sometimes when we hear these cases about people who have these bills that are being collected upon, and, they've had cancer and they're fighting this and that, and the law is just not on their side, and the evidence doesn't support it. And so that's what's been really difficult, is is, having to make those difficult decisions and own it. And people don't understand how difficult that can be. And, but what's been surprising for me, at least, I found that I love medical malpractice cases. I love the science behind it. It surprised me to no end, and I actually like it, and I actually enjoy jury trials for the most part. But I do agree with Judge Ortega that sometimes, like I had a question that popped up today, and I was like, I thought it through, and then ran down the hall and said, okay, am I out here? This is my analysis. This is what I think, and they're like, no, you're spot on. So. Because sometimes things happen so quickly and you've never had to deal with that before, you're kind of like, okay, what do I do? So, and this is actually the second jury trial that I've lost a juror. So just because of some unforeseen circumstance. So, those things happen and we just need to be flexible and go with the flow. And luckily we have good lawyers. And so that's also the other surprising part is when you have really good lawyers and you get like even 1/3 of a really good law clerk, it's so helpful in being able to get documents.
Thank you. I want to ask kind of an open question to all of you. So as we talked about, right, it's a big decision to decide to apply. And I think a big hope that we have through this presentation today is to help remove some of those barriers and some of those obstacles. Because again, right, you're never going to get appointed if you don't put your name in. That's the first step. And knowing when to apply, I know it can be difficult. Knowing, if I had enough experience, if I had the right experience, those can be tough questions. And so, but the question I know I've gotten from folks, or I've heard from people is, well, this is a Republican state and we have a Republican governor, and I've been very active in the Democratic Party, or I've been elected in this role here, or I think that I don't have enough community service, or my religious, affiliation might not be right and it's going to stand in the way, or I don't have the right practice area, or, all sorts of assumptions that are made of this is why I can't, or what's going to hold me back. I just open it up to those of you. How would you respond to folks who have those concerns?
Well, I was going to say, I think everybody suffers, well, maybe some people don't, but most people suffer from the imposter syndrome, and it happens a lot to women and minorities, and we self-select ourselves out. You can't do that. You have to have enough confidence to say, you know what, I'm just as good as everyone else. Yes, I'm going to have some blanks that I can't fill, but I have other blanks that I can fill. And so I bring something to this equation that would be great. And I remember, and I don't want to speak to Governor Herbert because he's the only governor I know who's appointed me, but he didn't care about your political persuasion or your religion or anything like that. Those are things that they can't ask. That doesn't mean that the legislature doesn't get into that and says something other or wants to inquire about things, but they know they can't. So then there's other things going on, but you can't let yourself be self-selected out. Governor Herbert didn't care about those kinds of things. And I don't think Governor Cox does either, but I wasn't appointed by him. I didn't interview him, so I don't know him that well, but I don't think that he would be that way. I just think you need to think about what do you bring to the table? Why do you really want to become a judge? And really think about those things. Get a copy of the application and see if you can look at it, because it's really, when you start looking at those questions, you really have to think very carefully and self-reflect about what it makes you the best candidate for the job. So don't say, oh, I don't have, I'm missing 5 of those qualifications, I'm not going to apply. I think Justice Pierce had told us that at a different CLE that I think the governors are looking for at least 10 years of experience, unless you're truly spectacular, but not everyone is Judge Ryan Harris. So we'll put that out there.
He's been practicing for much longer than 10 years.
Yes. I understand, but he's also 39 when he applied. So every year is kind of like, oh, he's young. That doesn't really matter. I think our governors have appointed younger people trying to have longevity on the bench and have good people who will continue that process. But think about it carefully. Talk to other judges. If you are in Utah, go to the women lawyers in Utah. They have this great mentoring program now. I wish they had it when I applied in 2012. But I know these ladies here are with the women lawyers, and they, I'm always happy to step up. What can I do to help you? And if a minority lawyer calls me, or even a person of the majority calls me, I'm always happy to help. I'm sure there are judges out there, if you know them, that would be happy to help you talk about this process and think about your career paths. that when you need to start thinking now as a law student, you can't wait till the end because not everybody gets lucky. You know, I think Justice Durham said that she just fell into it, you know, when she got appointed and then she became a justice on the Supreme Court before she retired. But you may not have all those situations. You need to make sure that you get into a good firm or with the DA's office or the legal defender's office. You need to find that right fit and make sure you have the best reputation. Join sections of the Utah State Bar or the American Bar Association. That's really important. They have people who are willing to support you and make good career decisions. Check in with someone that you feel is a really good mentor and check in with them and say, you know, this is what I'm thinking. You know, what do you think? You know, get some feedback on that. And so I think those are all important things to think about. And it's always really good to have someone to talk to. And if you're in Utah and you want to talk to me, please reach out. I'm happy to talk to you about the path. But I want to say one thing, Judge Ortega may be super social and a really lovely person, but you really need to know that sometimes you have to put away some of your friendships because as a judge, and this is a small community, you can't be friends with everyone. And we have to make really hard decisions. So if you enjoy being with lots of people and having lots of friends, this might not be the job for you. I'm just saying that. If you like your autonomy and you like being in private practice, making, I don't know, I heard Kirkland and Ellis is coming to town. They're hiring at $220,000 a year with a $50,000 signing bonus, which is more than us judges make. So, but you know, if you like the autonomy where you can come and go as you please, we can't do that as judges. I mean, I appreciate that Judge Shauna Graves-Robertson could work 8 to 5. I don't know that her schedule's like that anymore because I know that woman is always working. She's always working. I know, but she always got some. I work a lot of nights and I work a lot of weekends just to get my docket taken care of. But you know, I still love my job. I love it. I think it's interesting. It's fascinating. But there's a lot of things that you need to think about. Sorry, I just threw out a lot of things. I'm sorry, Tracy.
All right. And your view, just the comments.
As far as the just the process about, you know, politics and being involved, once again, I'm the Pollyanna of the group because when I applied with another colleague of mine, and we knew of another person who had applied, and the other person networked. It was as if it was a campaign, talking to people they knew, who knew legislators, and me and this other guy were like, we don't know anybody, but I think we should be picked because we are qualified, we work hard, and it shouldn't be based on that. And I really truly don't believe it's based on that. I know that there are possibly at times individuals who will throw names out like I know so and so and so. So I think sometimes that goes against you as far as helping you. So I think that never came across to me. I never thought about that because I was really just focused on showing the commission and showing the governor's staff why me being different made me an asset to the bench. So that was my focus. And it really goes back to your reputation. Really, I truly believe, and maybe JC can correct me if I'm wrong, you know, when you have to fill out that application, you can't just fill it out in last minute. You have to put thought into it because there are questions in there. And it's kind of like a, you know, a application for college, application for law school. Tell us about yourself. How are you different? How are you going to stand out? So it's not something you can do last minute. And you really need to put thought into the people who you're going to list because you have to list a lot of people. If you can fill out every number, like I think it's a 10 for each group, it's a big number. And some people are able to fill that. If you can fill each of those groups, that speaks volumes as to who you are, because I really, this is the Pollyanna and me again coming out, I really believe that, you know, when you get those evaluations, because I've gotten them from other people who applied, the evaluations you get for people who apply, they're not just a check of the box, like, yep, they're great, they're awesome. You have to put thought into that as well. As far as, and they ask you very detailed questions about how they are. So I think that also speaks volumes about you and how you are as a practitioner in the legal community. So I never thought about that. I never thought about the politics because I really did believe that the system did assess you based upon your experience and what you brought to the table.
I agree with what's been said. I think what's critical, not just that you believe in yourself and have the confidence that you have the background, the ability, but don't surround yourself with naysayers so much that they drive you away from that goal. There'll always be someone in your circle that will say, oh, you need to wait, or you need to do this. But you need to at least explore the opportunity and then determine with that degree of self-confidence that while I may not be of this political persuasion, this religious persuasion, I am qualified. I have put in my time within this legal community. I don't have any skeletons in any of the closets that I've opened and checked. And so therefore, I can be as competitive as anyone else in this legal community in a pool that may be 20, 30, or 40 attorneys. And then just go for it.
Thank you. I want to follow up on a couple of things that you all have said. And we mentioned, folks often think that politics, or Judge Ortega mentioned, I don't know the right people to give them away. I will just comment my experience, and I can't speak to every time through, but my experience is that our governors very much follow the Constitution in these appointment processes, which means that these are not partisan political appointments. They cannot consider things like your religion. They cannot consider any of those things. And along those same lines, candidates, you will see this, candidates who want to make the process political because they think it will help, right? So they'll throw out names, or they will suggest, I supported this, or I supported doing this. My experience has been that has worked to their detriment. And my analysis and the way I always treated that was, being a judge is not a political position. There's no place for that. And those who want to make it political in the appointment, it suggests to me that you want it to be a political position. So just keep that in mind. These are not political positions. You will not be asked about, about your political affiliation. Having been active in one group or another will not affect you in that appointment process. Now, there is a Senate that looks at things a little bit differently. They have the same charge, but they can approach some things a little bit differently. And that's something the governor's office will work very closely with you to manage and work through. Just know that they are very committed to making sure the governor's appointments make it through. My next point was there. So I will just stop talking in that regard. But I wanted to open it up for some questions. I have one last question for our panelists. But are there any questions of anyone in the room? Just you can ask. They're an open book.
Oh, the chat.
Oh,
the chat. Thank you. There's no questions in the chat yet. So.
Yes, how long is the appointment? And then after the appointment for so many years, do you do a general election?
Yeah, so I'll let any of you, the question was about how long is the appointment for, and then are there general elections? So I'll let any of you can all speak to this. I'll just say generally in Utah, the appointments are made and then you stand for retention elections. I don't know the exact times for each.
It's 6 years for the trial judges. I think it's 10 for the appellate. That's one thing we failed to mention. Be prepared, once you've been appointed and you've sat on the bench, to face retention where you're subject to not just the credentials and the judicial performance evaluations that are provided to the electorate, but be prepared for the negatives, because the challenges of the job and the role will have its moments where there are going to be those who will be in opposition to your position by virtue of what you did with regard to family members. And that's one thing that will catch you by surprise when you see that evaluation, and if you see some of the negative comments, which I would have to say, for the most part, are unfounded. We do lose our temper, we're human, but loss of temper is not a basis for disqualification as well. But just be prepared for the retention process as well. And I think Sue can testify to that as well.
I had a difficult retention where the Judicial Performance Evaluation Commission voted against me and voted not to retain me because some of the attorneys had downgraded me. If you had seen some of the comments, some of them related to my appointment process and the confirmation and the contested confirmation. So I've been starting at a very low level compared to my other fellow judges, but I work really hard so for Utah, when you're first appointed, it's no sooner than 3 years, but no more than 4 years after your appointment, and then you stand every 6 years on the district bench. And so, that was difficult too as well, and I still stood up because I didn't want anyone to say, hey, she backed down, she kowtowed to that. And because I don't want any of you who come behind me to say the same thing. And so I think it's really important that we all stand strong with each other. Now, I used to say that what doesn't kill me, to paraphrase Nietzsche, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, and I would prefer not to be made any stronger than I am. I would like to be soft and nice.
Other questions? Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'll just have any final advice to anyone who is thinking of applying? Let any of you answer.
Do it.
Well, our state needs more people in all the different districts. We need more women judges. We need more people of color. We only have 2 LGBTQ judges on our state benches, but if we have people who had certain experiences, whether I think even if you come from a low socioeconomic family, because a lot of times some of the judges that we have are very educated and came from good family backgrounds. People need people with different backgrounds because they're important to be on the bench. Because if you understand what it's like to be poor and struggling for every meal, I think that's important to a lot of the people that we see that come before us. So, but always be strong, always be somewhat kind if you can.
I would say if you even have an inkling that you might want to consider being on the bench, take the opportunity to visit with a couple of judges, get their impression, get a sense as to how it's impacted them, whether they like it or dislike it, and then make the decision. And as Judge Ortega said, do it. Don't doubt yourself. For us as minorities, particularly, sometimes the impression is you're there affirmatively because. There's no affirmatively because. You're there because you're qualified. No affirmative adjective needed. So consider yourself qualified and explore it.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me. I've been meeting with several minority lawyers. I'm happy to meet with other lawyers too as well. I'm happy to sit down and talk. Where's your career at? What are you doing? And so I do that all the time on my own. Nobody really knows. I just put it out there. But feel free to reach out to me. Just contact my staff. They'll let me know, and I'm happy to set up a time to meet with you. Preferably outdoors. Right now during COVID, so.
Or via Zoom or whatever.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that too, but people are tired of that, so I'm happy to take you to lunch or something.
Okay. Well, I will just say, we've talked a lot about this. Again, we have a merit-based system in Utah. We're really lucky, and I think that shows in the quality of our judiciary. These again are not political appointments. We are actively looking for people who are qualified, who are really well suited for this job, and you know whether or not this is something that would be great. If you're thinking about it, as was mentioned, there are so many resources here in the state, folks who are accessible and willing to help you think through that process, help you prepare an application, help you do a mock interview. I am happy to talk with people anytime. Our judges are willing to talk with people anytime. A number of organizations are willing to help put those resources out there. So take advantage of them. There's no reason that you need to, really be on your own through this process. The last thing I will say, and we've heard this, and I think Judge Ortega mentioned this, just be yourself through the process. I will say this, regardless of your background, there are hundreds of other lawyers with a similar background. The applications can start to look very similar. Because people often, and this is just me, but people, I think they know what a nominating commission, or they think they know what a governor wants to hear. So they work really hard to tell them what they think they want to hear. That is very apparent and very generic. Be sincere, be yourself. That is what will make you stand out. Again, doing the number of interviews that these folks do in this, they can tell when someone is prepared, but prepared to tell them what they think they want to hear versus prepared to tell them what they really think from their and have learned from their own experience. And that translates to what you will be like as a judge. So again, just reach out. We encourage people to apply. Thank you for spending the time with us here today. And let's give our judges a round of applause.
Thank you, Gracie. Can I just say one thing for those of you who are here? Judge Neider, she's from my district, from the 2nd district, and she had a serious family issue that came up this week, and our hearts and prayers, our thoughts and prayers are with her. But she just couldn't be with us here this evening. And then the other thing I wanted to do was thank John Fuente from our Office of Fairness and Accountability, Justice Pierce from the Utah Supreme Court, and I know we have Melinda, Gabriella, and Beth. I don't know all of them individually, we've only built over the email, but thank you all for your help from UCLI, from WLU, and from UMBA for all of your participation. So thank you.
Thank you. If you need a validation, come see me. And then if you haven't already and you'd like CLE credit, please sign the sign-in sheet outside the front door. And thank you,
There is a
everyone.
cash bar.
Yes, cash bar in the back if you need a parting drink.
Nice to meet you.